Hey, everybody, this is episode 99. We're going to talk about don't turn the channel. We're going to talk about customer acquisition costs. Actually, it's one of my least favorite topics and one of the most favored statistics you can get about your business. We're going to explain what CAC is, customer acquisition costs, how it's calculated, and why it matters for your business. We also walk through several practical ways to lower your CAC and why you should know it across all your advertising methods. In addition, we're comparing CAC to lifetime value so you understand how these two numbers work together and why your LTV should always be several times higher than the cost to acquire a customer or your CAC. We close the episode with average CAC numbers from common industries. This is a simple and helpful introduction to a metric that can completely change how you manage your marketing budget. He's Matt Hansen. I'm Jim Delo. Hey, Matt. Hey, well, I know you want to tell a little story about, I want to talk about CAC and what it means to the average business. Matt is the academic, and I sit here and run these, practical two companies. But we stay away from CAC, and a lot of times people that have a high CAC don't want to look at that. But tell us about your graduate CAC story.
Yeah, so I was in charge of our graduate program for about a year and a half, and we started to do some marketing work on it. And of course, nobody had looked at the marketing numbers to really understand what it was all about. So the first question I had was, how many dollars is it going to take to put a butt in a seat, is the way I put it, right? So what is is it going to cost us $100? Is it going to cost us $500? Is it going to cost $1,000? What does it cost to put somebody into an enrolled seat? So I made a phone call. I had a friend of mine that I had graduated with years ago that worked in the industry, and basically asked, friendly favor, can you kind of give me a rough estimate of what that number would look like? So from a public institution versus a private institution. So he came back, and it was a lot more than I actually thought it was going to be, which you talk about. Most people don't realize that your customer acquisition cost is much higher than you think it will be. So when I say that, and I forget the exact number at this point, but let's say it was about $2,000 to put, as I say, a butt in a seat for a public institution on a grad program. When you look at the private sector, right, so private institution, it was well over $10,000 to put somebody into that seat. So, do the math there, and you start to look at it, and you realize it's pretty expensive. Now, why would I want to know that? Well, because we were looking at allocating dollars towards marketing, and we were looking at, if we wanted to get X number of students into our program in the next year, what would that cost us, right? So let's say that we wanted to put 100 students get 100 students into the program next year. We knew we had to spend 100 times 2,000, right? Customer acquisition cost. That's what it would cost to put that many new students into our program. So the way we actually did it was we had a budget that was allocated, and then we divided that number into it to understand, okay, we should expect this many students coming in. Now, I know I've said a lot there, but what I'm saying is, if you understand your customer acquisition cost, whether it's $2,000 or whether it's $50, the way that we look at that is, if I'm spending this money to drive a customer in here, hopefully we're making more in the lifetime value of our customer, the LTV, than we are spending on the customer acquisition cost, right? So again, marketing is full of acronyms. CAC is customer acquisition cost, how much it costs for you to get a customer. LTV is the lifetime value of your customer. And looking at those two is really important.
What is there's all sorts of benchmarks for different industries. We'll get to those on what the CAC should be, but in relation to your long-term value, I already know the answer to this because I took your class, but what is the relationship, the ratio from CAC to LTV? What should be the range?
Yeah, at the minimum, I would say a 3-to-1 ratio. So if it costs you $50 to get a customer, obviously you would want to pull in $150 lifetime value. I've seen as 1 to 4, 1 to 3, whatever it may be, but ideally you want it much bigger than that. You want to find customers that keep coming back, spending more money. I've worked with some pretty significant large clients, and I don't want to call them out here, but when you look at the lifetime value of certain customers, you expect it to be really a lot higher in some instances. And I had one that was literally their lifetime value was 300, and I think it was 60 some dollars lifetime value. And we were sending emails and we were doing all this other stuff, and the opt-outs alone were outperforming. So if you took the opt-outs, the number of people that opt out of the email that they were sending times the lifetime value versus the people that were spending money, the opt-outs were actually much higher than what they were pulling in revenue. So, the customer acquisition cost and the lifetime value, they all tie together. But these are numbers that you have to really understand. And a lot of people out there are probably going, well, how do I calculate this? All of that, right? So it's literally the expenses that go into getting your customer divided by the number of customers that you get, right? So if I go out there and I say, well, I'm going to run a TikTok advertising campaign and I'm going to spend, $2,000. You should be able to tie the number of customers that came back to that. So you're basically taking that $2,000 and dividing it by, let's say you get 10 customers or 100 customers, whatever it is, and that's how you calculate it. But most people don't look at their advertising this way, right? They'll go out, they'll spend $500, and they never look at the numbers. They never calculate, the customer acquisition costs here, and they're just throwing money at the wall and hoping something sticks. What we're saying today is sit down. Every time you put money into a platform, if you're putting $1,000 into TikTok or $1,000 in Instagram or Google paid search or whatever it is, sit down and figure out a way that you can actually tie that $1,000 or that $2,000 to specific customers, and you'll understand what your customer acquisition cost is.
So there's a lot of variables here, but the main thing is just take the expense to get your customer and divide it by the number of customers. Now, the number of customers can be fairly straightforward unless you basically have a bifurcated system where you have real customers and then you kind of have stragglers that will be very low spenders, and then you got to decide, do you really include them in the entire number of customers? But it's the expenses to get customers that I remember from your classes where you kind of put it on, I don't know if it was a final, but it was a challenge to get the expenses. I mean, you don't just take your whole amount of expenses of the whole company.
No.
You have to narrow it down to what?
To the individual purchases, the individual things that you're doing. So if you're running, from a small retailer perspective, if you're sending out postcards to to a new list, right? People that aren't customers, and that postcard comes back in with some kind of discount code or redemption for a free giveaway or something like that. You should be tracking all of that back to that postcard. So I send out, let's say, 5,000 postcards to an area that we've never sent to before. 100 postcards come back, and we tie that to the revenues that are generated, right? So that, okay, 5,000 went out, maybe 50 people came in, right? We spent this much on those postcards. We divide that by the 50 people that came in and became customers. I mean, that's your customer acquisition cost. It's as simple as that, and you have to do that for every single purchase that you do in marketing. You have to understand these things. And the reason that I'm saying that is because when somebody like myself comes in and we start to look at companies, many times they're underperforming, right? They're just doing things. And one of the case studies that I love to tell about is we had a company that we were working with, and they were producing, they were growing 1% every single year, and we did a customer acquisition cost study on all of the things that they were doing. So they were doing a ton of direct mail at that point. We looked at every single list that they had to understand how well it was performing. So we did a customer acquisition cost based on list A, B, C, D. And when we started to go back out with new mailers and things like that, we looked at the customer acquisition cost and went from the cheapest to the most expensive. And when we ran out of money, that's when we stopped. So there were lists that were no longer getting messaging out there because we knew it was too expensive to go after that list, right? Because in recent, obviously things that we had learned through the data analytics. So what you're looking for is the cheapest way possible to get a customer. And when you lay all of that out in front of you, if I could create the perfect visual for you, if I could put TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Google display, Google paid search, even Yahoo paid search, right? Like Pinterest ads, LinkedIn ads, billboards, newspaper, radio, all of those things, if I could put those all on a board in front of you and say, here's your customer acquisition cost for each and every one of these, then you could hand select and literally go through it and say, okay, well, let's start with the cheapest and let's work our way up until our budget is gone. And I think nobody thinks about it this way unless you are, that top level marketer at a major company. But what I'm saying is most of the people that are listening to this may be doing 2, 3, 4 different things. Start to look at it and go, all right, what did we spend? Can we track the customers? And then let's run it again and test it and test it and test it. And then you get a better feel for what works, what doesn't, what costs you a ton of money, and what doesn't.
All right, so let's go through how this relates to conversion. Or, we've already kind of gone deeper into customer acquisition costs and lifetime value is deeper than we normally do on conceptual stuff, but this is a very important one. Let's go back to making sure that all of the cost of your marketing and to acquire a customer, what other than mailers, do you take a portion of the executive secretary? Do you take a portion of taking people out to eat? What do how do you bring all of those costs in?
I mean, you could pull in your overhead costs as well, but odds are they're fixed costs. They're already being paid. So the way that I like to look at it is the variable cost. So if we open the doors today, we're still paying our employees, we're still paying the light bills, we're still paying, rent or whatever. All of that is going to be paid regardless. So you can't really tie that back to a customer acquisition cost. From a variable cost perspective, you can do the Facebook ad or the Instagram ad or any of these different things, or you cannot, and it's not going to necessarily change the day-to-day operations of what's going on. So what I like to say is look at the ad dollars that you're putting into it. If you're hiring a designer to do something, if you're hiring somebody to do video, those are all variable costs based on what you're doing here, right? That's the way I would look at it. I wouldn't tie in the overhead to it. So
you're and let's just be straight on the fixed versus variable. You should have an understanding of that in your business. But the variable cost of, you're going to have some costs that you have to shade from, you got to say, is that operations? Mm-hmm. If you're looking at the business, all right, they got their fixed costs. How many columns do you like on a variable cost level?
I think it all depends. Every business is different, but you're talking about overhead, right? So let's say you've got, Hunter sitting in the other room and he's working on marketing and you're saying, okay, we're going to run an ad campaign to drive new business, or he's going to be doing some kind of email reach out. If he spends 3 hours this week out of his entire hours, and then you look at the large, over time, what percentage of that? Sure, you could allocate those dollars, right? So whatever you're paying him per hour, or whatever, however that works out.
On top of the cost for the design and implementation of the Facebook ad.
Right. And I think customer acquisition costs are actually coming down. I think the biggest thing to understand, I was playing around last night. I don't. Have you ever checked out Google Labs?
I use Google Gemini, and they keep bringing a pop up. Hey, go over here, check out Google Labs. I have
Yeah.
not hit the link.
I think I was like 3 hours into it last night, but they have this thing, I forget what it's called. It's skipping my mind, but they have this thing now where literally you put in your website and it will go grab all of your fonts, your logo, your imagery. It'll create brand colors for you. It'll create your mission. And then you hit one button and it will create a campaign for you. And it'll do both static and video. And it was really cool. And I was sitting there and I'm thinking about, we're talking about customer acquisition costs today. And people that want to spend hours and hours and hours doing design work at this point, I literally clicked 3 buttons and there was a campaign that I could literally download and put out there on any of the social channels. Like it gave me options. Do you want it this ratio? You want it this ratio? Do you want to animate this? You hit animate and 3 minutes later it's animated the static image. I mean, but that's what I'm saying. Like, customer acquisition cost is coming down lower and lower and lower. So if you understand what that cost is and you can compare it to that LTV, that difference, that 3-to-1, that 4-to-1 that we were talking about earlier, is actually getting much wider, which is great, right? Like you're having the ability to make more money on some of the things that you're doing. So, whether it's variable cost, whether it's fixed cost, going back to the question, I think you can allocate whatever you want to allocate. Customer acquisition cost is open to interpretation. If I'm spending money on design work, if I'm spending money on mailing, if I'm spending printing, if I want to include my time, we've talked a lot about time on this and how much an hour of your time is worth, right? So if I'm going to sit down, I'm going to spend 3 hours on this, what do I value my time at? That's got to be included as well. So it's open to interpretation, but I guess the point of what we're trying to get across today is most people don't even look at it.
So let's use a couple of benchmarks. Real estate, to get a lead for either a buyer or seller, what's a good benchmark?
Yeah, I was looking these up yesterday, and what I found was they had $226 as a customer acquisition cost for real estate, right? So that sounds like a lot, but when you figure that you're selling a home, that you are taking a nice little commission off of that, would you pay $226 to pull in a couple $1,000s or even more?
No,
right?
I think I saw that the median home price is inching up towards 400,000.
Yep.
So let's say at 400,000, say you get at least a 4% on that. So that's you're getting a $16,000 commission on a $226 spend.
Right.
Of course, you've got all the costs of selling it and your own time and all that, but the actual getting that customer was $226.
But see, going into that, right? So customer acquisition costs, you said what goes into that? We're talking about could be the ad dollars, could be the time spent, could be gas, could be your car. Like there's all these things that go into. So it's not just the ad dollars that go into it. It's the time, the effort, if I'm driving, as a real estate agent, you're driving to meet all of these people at different homes. So, I don't know what the national, tax per mile is right now, but if you're talking 67 cents or whatever it is at this point per mile, and you put in 30 miles or 20 miles over time to get for that one customer, I mean, that should be included with your customer acquisition cost.
We talk about my buddy who has the HVAC firm, and he's mostly word of mouth, but he still does a little bit of advertising. What should he expect to spend on each customer?
Yeah, I saw this at 98. So,
that's about what I would have guessed, $100.
I mean, HVAC, you're spending what? Anywhere between, at this point, $8,000 all the way up. I mean, those things have gotten pretty pricey over the last couple of years. So it's
financial services.
I mean, financial services are interesting. $173 is what we have, but there's a ton of money. Again, you got to look at it from the lifetime value of a customer, right? So if some people will look at that and go, oh, $173 to get a new customer, no way. But they don't compare it to the lifetime value and say, well, am I making $5,000? Am I making $3,000? Am I making $300,000?
Well,
I don't know.
in their case, you're talking 3 to 4. So if they're spending $173, you could expect in maybe a $600 to $700 per client.
Yeah.
So, what's the takeaway?
The takeaway is that if you are not measuring your business in these simple metrics, you are throwing money away. You don't understand. You're making the wrong decisions. It's like you're starting your business from day one every single time you spend money. So if you're like, well, let's go do a campaign. Well, you don't even know what works best because you haven't tracked anything, right? So I've been part of small businesses and I've been part of big businesses, and this is not tracked by both of them. And really, smart marketers, smart business owners will sit down and start to look at this and go, okay, if I spend $1,000 here, if I spend $1,000 there, which is the better return? And at what point does one start to shift towards the other one, right? So if you understand customer acquisition cost, lifetime value, you're going to make better decisions. You're going to make bigger money.
Episode 99, customer acquisition costs and lifetime value. Until next time, we'll see you later. Hey, everybody, this is our 100th episode of Mastering Local Marketing. Can you believe we made it this far, Matt?
Yes. And the only reason I say yes is because you know me at this point. You know that when I set out to do a goal, we're going to hit it. So I'm glad we hit it before December 31st. We're actually a couple weeks early.
Yeah, if to go back on it, I think I said we need to do 100 episodes to see if this works.
I think you said 20, and I said 100 is how it went.
Well,
Here we are.
Here we are, and why are you doing this?
Why am I doing what? The podcast?
I know you got me to read all this stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm okay with it, but I just want, this is our 100th episode.
Yeah.
We've helped a lot of small and medium-sized businesses. I know that I've gotten the feedback, and please tell other small and medium-sized businesses about us. But why are you personally doing this?
I think I talk with business owners on a daily basis, and I hear all the time, marketing is hard. I don't understand marketing. I need help. My business isn't where I want it to be. And I have the same conversations over and over and over again. And it was one of those things where if I could just hit a button, right? Like hit a button and say what I have to say over and over and over again to these businesses, I would have that button. And then I realized if we just did a podcast, we could record it, and then I could say, hey, go back to the podcast and listen this episode about XYZ. And it just dawned on me. I said, we've got to put this into some kind of recording where people can listen. And for all of you out there that have been listening, and all of you that have reached out and said things, and we've had conversations off the podcast, through email, through phone calls, in person. It's amazing to hear how everyone is taking what we're saying here and they're implementing it, and their eyes are being opened to that marketing is not hard. It's just a process, right? It's a habit that you have to get involved in. And I get more and more excited. We're at 100, and I know you kind of said, well, where do we go from here? And I said, we go to the next 100, and we go to the next 100, and we keep going because it's become a habit. And I don't know if Jim wants to hear that, but I feel there's so much going on, and we can revisit all of these things that we've talked about. And that's kind of what we're going to do today. We're going to go back and listen, or not listen, but discuss our favorite episodes, the things that you took out of certain episodes, the things that I took out of certain episodes that I look at, that I continue to share with people, or we're looking at, what were the most popular episodes, what were the comments and emails and downloads and all these different things. So I think that's where we're at today is let's revisit what 100 episodes, what 37 hours of content got us to today, and what are some of the things, if you had to go back and listen to those 37 hours, what are the 5, 6, 7 things that you would say go back and listen to? So that's where we're at today.
She's Adriana Alvarez. We are actually on the campus of Purdue Northwest. My private companies have been renting here. We're actually moving a radio station back home in a little bit, but this is doing the first 100 episodes on the campus of Purdue Northwest. And in a weird way, this is an entirely student-run project, and it's led by someone who's had their final just finished today. That's Adriana Alvarez. Adriana, you have put this together, and I guess all we can do is say thank you for your hard work.
Thank you guys for going 100 episodes, for staying dedicated, and even though there may have been some delays here and there with uploading and or just making sure that we got everything that we needed scheduling wise, worked out, and we got 100 early, like Hanson said earlier in the episode. We got here a lot earlier than we expected, so now got to get to the 200 mark.
Yeah, it's a great team. It's an absolute great team that you've got working here.
So we started this. This was maybe the third or fifth podcast, or what number was it? It was.
No, this was the second.
Yeah, it was the second. I think
yours was the first.
Mine's the first, And I think just in the past week, this has overtaken mine in terms of listens. But
At the moment, let's actually see.
all right, well,
here.
we won't give exact numbers, but it's
well, no,
close.
I'm not going to give the exact
Yeah.
numbers, but I
We've
will
passed.
say we've.
It's passed.
All right, I know it has.
Our goal is 200 episodes, but our other goal is to get in all 50 states. We're almost there.
Yeah.
I think we're missing like maybe 10. But we are
It depends.
global.
We've had it where we were not in 3, so I've seen it as good as that. So we'll keep going. We'll get to those random states that have very little population.
Just to put it in context, this was the second podcast, and I think this is near the end of 2025. So this would have been, I think, first or second quarter where we started of 2025. So Adriana, to give credit, has built a kind of a network, perhaps a little bit around this podcast. And now, how many pods do you have?
We will have 20 come the start of Monday.
So this is the second podcast out of, and there's all sorts of them that have followed. So not just listen to Mastering Local Marketing and liking it and subscribing, but you can go and subscribe to her channel on Apple and Spotify. And how do they do that?
You search up WJLB Podcast Network, and from there you will be able to see all of the different podcasts we have. And if you are looking for this one in particular, just look up Mastering Local Marketing, and it'll be the first one.
There it is. So we actually went to a podcast conference, the three of us, and I think that was pretty helpful, right?
Yeah, it was good.
I mean, Matt didn't get as much out of it as Adriana and me, but it worked. Hey, let's look back.
Yep.
I'm going to start this. So the impact of these 199 and now the 100th episode varies for your business and for your marketing department. So out of those episodes, you're going to pick one that really resonated with your business. And I'll tell you one, it happened with me right off the bat, was episode 2, and that was the actual sales funnel. Reader's Digest version of the sales funnel.
Yeah, so the sales funnel is simply, you've got to look at awareness first, generate awareness for your business, then get them to consider actually buying from you, and then purchase, right? So customer. For those of you that are listening, maybe we'll take up a collection and buy Jim a shirt that's got the sales funnel on it for his birthday or something like that. I think
January 12th, by
he
the
loves
way.
the sales funnel. So, but no, I mean, it's good to understand, right? So we've talked many times about how awareness for a local small business is anywhere between 10 and 30% on average. Depends on where you're at and those things, if you're in a small town versus a larger populated area like where we're at. But understanding awareness, getting people from awareness to consideration and then to customer, right? So if you throw 100 people into the funnel, not all of them are going to consider you, not all of them are going to purchase from you. But once you understand those numbers, you're going to get a better idea of what you need to do. Because if awareness is the key, it's just get out there. They need to see you more often. If they already know who you are, it's why are you different? What's your positioning? So that's the consideration side. And then, once they consider you, how do we get them to purchase, right? So what does that sales process look like?
So the reason I bring that up is that a lot of you are just like zipping through the operations part, the technology part of your business, maybe the overhead, maybe the HR end of it. And you kind of don't even really want to think about the theory of what are you trying to do. And I can get that picture in my head right now. We're on the awareness at the top of the funnel. That middle of the funnel is where you have people considering you. And then certainly at the bottom is the sale. I think of it as awareness, consideration, close. And it has kind of changed. We've been able to plug everything else that we've learned here into that funnel. And it also coincided with the fact that one of them's a VC, and we were just 5 years of just building it. And then all of a sudden we're building a marketing department. I didn't know where to start. I mean, I've taken his classes and stuff, but maybe not on a conceptual and application method. All right, so I picked an episode and how it changed our business and our concept. You pick one now.
Yeah, no, one of my favorites was episode 6, where we talked about the 3 things that you need to track, right? So we talked about how back in the day, I uncovered that if you understand the number of customers that walk through your door every single day, or that call you every single day, the number of number of people that walk through your door, the number of people that purchase from you every single day, and what that average order is every single day, and you chart those over a year process, it is like looking into the future. It's a crystal ball as to what's going to happen the next year. And then you start measuring everything off of that. So if you are increasing your marketing budget by 10% the next year, how does that resonate with the number of people that come through your door or call you? How many new customers, are you seeing drastic upticks? Are you doing certain things that your average order starts to escalate, right? So does it go from $50 average order to $100 average order? I honestly, I'm telling you, if you do anything, understand those metrics, and you can literally look at a chart of 365 days and know when you're going to be slow, when you're going to be busy, when the worst, you'll see spending patterns where you may be busy, but the average order is coming down certain times of year. Like, there's all kinds of data just by looking at those 3 things. And it's so simple, because all you're doing is, if you have a local retail store, you get phone calls coming in, you're just putting a check mark on a piece of paper saying, all right, there's a call, or there's somebody that walked in. And then at the end of the day, you're looking at the orders that you had, which if it's a receipt or if it's something in the system, and then you're looking at the money that we brought in, each order. So this one was $65. This one was $33, right? Like, you start to chart all of that, and I'm telling you right now, it's a crystal ball as to where your business is going. It's the coolest thing.
So you can actually take those 3 data points and push them against each other.
Yeah.
Like, what's my average? You could say, what's my average sale versus how many people walk through the door?
Right.
Well, how many? What's the percentage of visitors that actually become customers? And you can use those data points against each other. In the last episode 99, we went into CAC and LTV. It might be a little bit further on from that, but it's related. Mm-hmm. So, all right, I'll take one now.
Sure.
Episode 3 in the beginning, and this podcast has changed my venture capital business. Not necessarily the long-standing one on radio and now the podcast network, but we started a streaming network that we thought was going to be news and talk and all that. That didn't work at all. And then we went in and started streaming sports, and now we have 25 schools and we have 1,000 games. And Matt actually helps us out with that network now, and it has exploded. But in doing that, we were specifically going after one location units in each of the towns that we had schools. And at the beginning of the year, when we first started doing this, we might have been at 15 different communities, and we were going at those communities. After that episode, we started to look at like good versus bad customers, and it took actually more work in servicing and getting the small customer in one town versus the regional customer we use as a benchmark. They have to have more than one location, or if they have one location, it has to cover a 3-county area, which is 750,000 people. So it was very conceptual, and it changed where we were going on the good versus bad customers. It wasn't just that it was a small amount on going on the single town customer. It was that it was actually more work, we found, to service them, get it, do the contract, and they wanted, there were more complaints at that level than there were on the regional customers. So we went to a thing where we only sell to regional customers. It was a life-changing episode from Mastering Local Marketing.
Yeah, it's interesting with you, because a lot of people will look at this and say, well, small, they matter, and they do matter, right? But when you have somebody that is spending, let's say, $200 this month and you have somebody that's spending $30,000, the $30,000 people are less inclined to watch over what's going on. They cut a check, they send me periodic updates. The $200 order, it's almost like their life savings. They want to know everything that's going on, where that $200 went, what did I get out of it? Can I have a conversation? How do we change it? How do I get more? And it's all of these questions that start to build. So it's not that they're not valuable or that they're a bad customer. It's just we've talked many times about how time is the most valuable thing. So if you're going to spend time on something, I would rather spend it on somebody that's going to have less questions, somebody that's going to spend a lot more and let you kind of do what you promised to do versus somebody that's literally asking questions every 5 seconds. And I'm not saying those are bad. I'm just saying you're running a business and you have so much time, and same thing to our listeners, you have so much time to work on something. Don't put all of your time into small projects. Put your time into things that matter, things that aren't going to kind of stall you in where you're heading.
We won't go too far into that, but the 80-20 rule applies in that you get 80% of your revenue from 20% of your customers. And once I just started applying the 80-20 to our QuickBooks, I'm like, okay, I know where this needs to go. Yeah. We need to get honestly, we need one client a month. That's it. Yeah. In the amounts that we're talking versus thinking that we had to have 7 or 8. We needed to be getting that many every month, and that really changed things around. Please go back and listen to that one, good versus bad customers. You like episode 14, how science increases your store sales. Talk about it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting from a psychology standpoint and understanding how human beings go through stores and what gets their attention. I have a graphic on my phone that it basically says, it goes from largest to smallest, and it says you'll read this first, then you'll go here, and it's literally working down smaller fonts. So our eyeballs the larger something is, the more inclined we are to look at it. Right. So whether it's a website, whether it's your retail location, whatever it may be, or could be something as simple as your Google Business Profile has 1,000 reviews versus the next competitor that has 23. Our eyeballs are going to go to that and go, oh, well, they must be better, right? So there's nothing to say that we're better having 1,000 reviews versus 23. It's just the fact that we've collected the reviews and they haven't, right? That could quite honestly be the reason for it. Or we've talked about grocery stores. You walk into a grocery store and how you're walking around what we call the racetrack, and you'll see the florist there, which is to stimulate smells. It starts to get us hungry, and then you see the bright colors of the fruit and vegetables, and you have the prepared meals, and all of that is getting us hungry as we enter the middle of the store. Or the fact that you have milk always hidden in the back corner and it's impossible to get to because we know that roughly 80% of what you're going to grab when you go get milk is stuff that you weren't planning on grabbing in the first place. So the science behind a store, or the science behind your business, is really interesting because you can draw people's eyeballs to certain things that you want them to sell. You can set up barriers to stop people in their tracks. You put testimonials next to products that sell really well or that you want to sell a lot of, like your best producing products, because people want reinforcement for that. So the science, when I say we're not actually doing chemistry here, but the science behind it is that we can look at ethnographic studies to understand how people respond, and we can incorporate that into our marketing, even if we're just a one person small shop in rural America.
So episode 78, we talked about conversion rates and how it was related to email, paid search, paid social, that kind of stuff. That might be one where we got some of the most input on, because there were some very surprising numbers on what your spend would get, take you to ultimately a conversion. What were you hearing about this episode?
I've referenced this episode more than any other episode, and it's because when I sit down with people, I go, "What are you doing?" Well, we're running our own social, right? We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok. And I go, how's that working? And they're like, well, we get some people here and there. And I say, how's it converting? And they're like, well, it doesn't convert. It's, and I said, okay, are we focused on awareness? Or are we focused on consideration, right? And conversion. And you start to have those questions, right? So it's a leading point. But if you're trying to convert somebody right now, posting something on your Instagram profile is not going to convert as well as if you had an email list, right, that you're sending out. Email is still king. Despite what everyone wants to say, email is still king. So if you have a nice email list and you're sending out consistent messaging, valuable messaging to your subscriber base, and you throw out an offer out there, many times that's going to outperform anything that you can possibly do. Again, paid social, paid search, right? So you go to Google, you buy keywords. Those people are actively looking for a solution to something that they're searching for. On paid social, it's gotten so good, right? They will put you in front. I mean, you see ads all the time based on your personal preferences. It's gotten so good that they will serve it up to the right audiences. And we mentioned in an episode in the past that by 2026, Meta is going to be 100% AI driven in those ads. So just keep that in mind. Like, this is how you get conversions. This is how you sell things. So if you have an e-commerce site, understand that, right? Like, these are the types of things that you need to be doing. So if you're posting to your own social, your own Instagram account, your own TikTok account, many times you're not getting the conversion. You may be building awareness, you may be building some content, and you're out there, but if you're looking for the conversion, it's email, paid search, paid social.
Email 3.2%. I remember the chart. It was way higher than, I think podcasting was like 0.3%.
Yeah, it's really low.
It's really low. I mean, of course, podcasting might help you with awareness, but it does not translate to conversion.
No.
Not nearly like emails do.
No.
All right, finally, I'll take the last one.
Sure.
Episode 93, which we just did a few weeks ago. And it has it kind of encapsulated what we went through here. It was named after me, the Jed TV Sports Network. And Matt Hansen came in and after a while started looking at all the massive growth and said, all right, maybe I'll help you guys out a little bit. And I said, okay. First day Matt Hansen walks in. Number one thing he does, he says, great, we're going to build a marketing department and all here, but we're first going to change the name. Why?
Well, again, it was called Jed TV, right? And Jed TV is about you. It doesn't say anything about sports. You went to the sports side. And, you got to realize that when somebody isn't aware of who you are, your name should represent what you are all about. So it's, obviously you've changed the name and it represents what you guys are doing. But a lot of people will create a name that's irrelevant to whatever they're doing. And when somebody doesn't know who you are and they see the name and they can't make the connection to what it is, I don't know what that is, right? So that's the hard part. But walking in, it's less about you. It's less about, kind of the name that everybody knows you as. But now you've pivoted, you've changed, and you have new audience, you have new needs, and you needed to separate it from, obviously the radio station, the podcast network, and all those types of things. So it needed its own identity because it's a growing thing. Like, you would not have a child and never just, unless you're George Foreman, name them all the exact same name, right? They should be unique. They should have their own identity. And that's really what you realize when we had that conversation is, yes, it does need its own identity, and it's going to grow from there.
It was a short conversation. I said, okay, that was it. But we went from the Jed TV Sports Network to the Heartland Sports Network. They did a lot of work on it. And I just said, hey, man, I'm just going to listen to you. But if you have a long-standing business, you're probably not going to go that direction. But this business just kind of started up, and it was like a side business, and now it's our main business. And it kind of erupted on us. We never thought about a name or any of the marketing. So that's how that went. But there are certain fundamentals that you got to look into about rebranding, and Matt goes through that in episode 93. Matt, I'll summarize what I think that these first 100 episodes have done for us here in more than any of these specific things, like paid social or what kind of customers or what your LTV is, all that stuff we've covered. The biggest thing that I think that I've gotten out of these first 100 episodes is an attitude of, marketing matters. Marketing needs to be as important as all the quality of streaming a game or buying software or putting people in the right position. In your business, you may be on the same thing. You're like so busy all the time. You don't want to spend money. Oh, I don't need to spend money. It's all word of mouth. Okay, good enough. Then you're not listening to this podcast. But if you're at all interested in all, the biggest thing that I can say is to perhaps be open to what good digital marketing and local marketing can do for your business.
Yeah, I've said it countless times. I said it to you yesterday that marketing, I had a mentor that marketing, he basically said marketing is everything. Everything is marketing and marketing is everything. And you mentioned word of mouth. Oh, it's just word of mouth. Well, word of mouth is marketing. You're getting people to talk about you. And what I've said this over and over and over again. Let's go build a store. Let's go build a business. Let's go build anything. And let's put it in the middle of a desert. Because that's essentially what you're saying is if marketing is nothing, that's what you would do. You would put it in the middle of a desert. So you're not looking at prime location. You're not looking at the signage outside. You're not looking at community. You're not looking at any of these things, which we've talked about extensively on this podcast. You're dropping it in a desert. And what you're telling me is if you're not doing marketing, you're still going to sell. And that's not going to happen because marketing is literally every touch point. It's somebody driving by your business. It's somebody seeing a billboard. It's somebody you met at a chamber event. It's somebody you met at a holiday event recently, right? Like I was at lunch 2 days ago with my boss at the university, and we walked into two individuals at another table. They handed me a business card. They're in the same space as I am. I still need to email them, right? Like I'm just having lunch and there's the marketing conversation. They were asking me what I do. I was asking them what they do. Everything is marketing. So if you tell me that you're not doing marketing, I'm going to call, and say baloney. It's not what's happening. But I've used that example. Go put your business in the middle of a desert and do not have any outside contact with anyone and see if they walk in your door. It will never happen.
Hoping for 100 more podcasts. This is episode 100, a year of small business marketing lessons. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, not only
This
for
has been
doing
fun.
the podcast, but I mean, not only for getting involved with us, but I personally, I sat through 95 of these, and I feel like I got another MBA, or actually better than the first time I went through. And so I thank you. But mostly, I thank our producer, Adriana Alvarez, who is in finals right now and made a special effort. During the first podcast that we taped today, she ran over, handed in her final, and came back.
Yeah.
That's how dedicated she is. So thank you, Adriana. Final comment.
Stick with us. If you care about this podcast, go out there and give us a review. I would love to see what your thoughts are. I hear a lot by email. I hear a lot of people on giving me phone calls, and even people that I just randomly will come up to me and like, oh, I listened to your podcast, and I'm hearing a lot of good. And I like to hear that because what you're also telling me is areas that are most important to you. So if you want to go out there and you want to give us a review and kind of shed some light as to the areas of that we can dive a little bit more deep into, would love to hear it. I think that's probably where the next 200 episodes are. We start to dive in a little bit deeper, a little bit more into some of these topics, but we'll see where it goes.
Till next time, see you later.
My daughter is being treated for leukemia. It hit me hard. It did.